Well, this is a topic that I actually have an opinion on. It's something. The speculation stuff is actually something that I do have some thoughts on it that people may find interesting or whatever. So
well, we're live. Welcome to the No Faces Comic Chat. This is BUB'S Comics. Thank you, or this is Bub from BUB'S Comics. All of us here at BUB'S Comics welcome you. And it's a tireless.
Hey, this is like a merger and an acquisition. We've been acquired.
Oh no, you'll get your divisional thank yous in a minute. But
okay.
It's a tireless team here behind the scenes at BUB'S Comics. I mean, we couldn't afford light bulbs, so we got like 14 people holding up Bic lighters, and then their thumbs start to burn out. They got to switch hands. It's an absolute mess. But I tell you, thank you to all the people here at BUB'S Comics for everything you do to make this happen. And with me, as always, is the knowledge, the man who has every book in his collection. If you need it, he's got it, and he ain't selling it. We got Roger Metarog. Welcome to the chat.
Greetings, everyone. Slight hyperbole there on Bob's part there, but yeah, me and my 9,000 comics are at your disposal.
Oh, nice. And with us, almost as much as always, if not a hair more than always as much as the previous always as much guest / co-host is DS Comics. Welcome, DS.
What's up? Thank you for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for everyone who's already in the chat. We got 9 people, so yeah, this is awesome.
All right, and our special guest this evening, and just a reminder, a special guest is someone who does not generally show their or someone who does generally show their face in their own YouTube videos, but for the purposes of this evening, we'll go no faces. We have Daniel, aka Probe 186. Say hello.
hey guys, very happy to be here. This is very exciting. It's a dream come true, and and yeah, the rules were very strict about no face. So this should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, and Daniel has a very nice face, unlike the 3 very punchable faces of your co-hosts. So, well, I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Well,
we know, Daniel. Trust me, we know.
I haven't gotten too many complaints. I've been out there a couple times. I did one with Comic Books NYC the last week, and then I usually do that Golden Guys. I haven't gotten any complaints yet, Bob. So,
well, they're coming. And, you're doing
that's
good.
fine. I say bring it on.
When I saw you for the first time, I had remarked to Roger that you looked exactly like I thought you would. I don't know if that's necessarily a compliment, but it was true. So I know you value sincerity above all. So
I do value sincerity above all. So that's what I expected. That's awesome.
So in the long-standing tradition of making our newest special guest feel very uncomfortable and scared, I'm going to ask Daniel. Daniel, do you remember what the name of our team is tonight?
We are the Best Offer Lowballers, I believe.
Yeah!
Wow.
All right.
Woohoo!
I gotta say, that's the best anyone's ever done.
That's pretty good.
Nobody ever gets that. Nobody.
Man, remember the boy who had 7? The first time he was on, he was fumbling and tore up. Couldn't remember what it was. It was great.
So, do you want my opinion on the title?
No.
Okay.
So, Roger, the reason, I'll just go ahead and say that the reason that I selected this title specifically is because it's the counterbalance to a team name that we had 2 weeks ago when we were the FMV MVPs. Of course, that stands for fair market value, right? So I know DS is a fair market value guy. He likes the fair market value. He likes to build in the equity in the book over time. There's no sense in trying to beat somebody up for a good deal when the deal and time presents itself. If it's a solid investment, you don't have to do that, right, DS?
Well, some of that's right and some of it's not, but if I can go ahead and address it whenever you're all ready to hear my thoughts on it.
In a minute. First, I
Yes.
want to hear from Roger. Now, Roger, what do you think about lowball offers?
Well, I don't give any others, so you know, so to me, is there another option? I mean, of course, I'm gonna, you know, I don't pay full price for anything if I can avoid it. You know, I mean, my gas, my electricity, I don't have a choice there. They're monopolies, but everything else, I try to get a discount out of. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if you and Bub were the only, if everybody in the comic buying world was just clones of you and Bub, the Overstreet price guide values would still be spot on.
Very well said. Very well said.
I appreciate that.
Touche.
Well, good deal. Hey, in the chat, we also have JPL Flash, Knights of Old, Werewolf by Lunchtime. We know he usually has to go to work soon, so thanks for catching us. JPL Flash, of course, staying up to the wee hours of the morning or whatever he does in the wee hours of the morning.
It's afternoon for him.
Is it? No, it isn't. It's evening.
He's over in California.
JPL Flash is in California?
Oh, I thought you said JB. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're all right. We'll get back to that later. Comic Collector is in the house. Comic Book Gallery. Hey, I haven't seen too many of his videos lately. I wonder what he's up to. Mike, Area 51 Mike's in the house. Of course, we got DS and Metarog showing up late. We got Bigglesworth in the house. Thank you for joining us. And we have Thomas Churchill. He's somewhat local to me. Good to see you. And we got JP in the house. Thank you for joining us, as mentioned by Roger. So there you go, Roger. And thanks for doing the great comic YouTube lineup that he does. And I tell you, today I was so impressed. He did a premiere of the lineup, and that was a lot of fun. Roger, you were in there, weren't you?
Yep, sure was. Yep.
Boy, that was a hoot because it's a short video. We all know it's going to be short. We're all excited. Everybody was just shooting off. That chat was flying a mile a minute. I really enjoyed it, and it inspired me to go ahead and donate to his Patreon today. So I encourage everybody who enjoys that lineup as much as I do, and especially if you're a creator that he highlights in any way as part of that. You know, he's doing it all for free, and so are we. But man, I tell you, I appreciate him so much. I just wanted to give a little bit, at least this once, and we'll see what happens. You know, if it holds its value next month, I might give again. But I'm sure he'll take it all. So you guys, if you're on Patreon, sign up and throw a little change his way, because he is one of the hardest working men in YouTube, and I would say nearly tied with our good friend Roger, who does the weekly roundup, contest roundup, which is also a bear of which I want no hair of.
Well, I think JB has got me probably 5 or 10 times over, because he does this every day. He does the editing. I don't edit my things. I just shoot it and away they go. So he's much harder working than I am.
Let me tell you something. I'd rather edit a 10-minute video than keep up with 87 Post-it notes. So it's different kinds of work is all I'm saying.
I guess that's true. That's true.
Oh man, what both of you guys do is no joke. There's no question. I mean, just you know, everything I had to do just to get this live stream working for me. Forget about it. You know, I mean, I should be doing a lot better than I am with this stuff. I don't even know how to edit videos. I'm like, my videos are as basic as they get. You know, I can't tell you how many times I accidentally left stuff in there that I was supposed to cut out, but I just didn't know how. And I was just like, whatever, you let it go. So, I mean, all these guys, you know, Roger, forget about it. He's got, I mean, all those Post-its. I mean, you know,
it's insane.
You know, you definitely, I mean, you must buy in bulk, because, I mean, you use a heck of a lot of Post-it notes for these contests.
I have 2 words for you, Daniel. 2 words. Garage sale.
Nice.
I get
Did you find all the garage sales
and garage sales.
That's so wild.
Yep. That is so funny. Who would sell a Post-its at a garage sale? I mean, you have to buy
Post-its at a garage sale.
I found a box the size of like a shoebox full of them for a buck.
Amazing.
So
And in all that, you
Amazing.
couldn't find two the same color to put on your display.
Hey, listen, beggars can't be choosers, buddy. I don't care if it's fuchsia. I don't care if it's chartreuse. I'm getting it.
At least turn them up both the same way. It tries to. You don't know what it does to somebody with a slight hint of whatever I've got.
Roger, I would love for you to.
I do that just to irk you, Bub, because I know it irks you. I always put one a different color at least.
Yes, and then turn one upside down. It's like a double slap in the face.
Roger, one of these days you need to wear a body cam when you go to garage sales and show us, your process.
I don't know if we want to see him pushing over a bunch of little old ladies who are hovered over boxes. It could be quite disturbing for the rest of us.
Let me tell you, those ladies can be vicious. Okay, they're no joke. All right, they are no joke. I'd rather go up against a 300-pounder than one of those ladies. Okay, they are no joke.
Well, maybe next time you ask them to take their teeth out before they bite you. So tonight we have, of course, Daniel's on the panel, and I don't know if this got caught in the opening of the video tonight, or the stream tonight. But the topic is we're going to be talking about speculating. Now, we're not really here to make speculations. That's not what we're doing tonight. And if you did that homework to the panel, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. But more, it's what are your thoughts on speculation? So, which, if you want to throw out some spec books, I don't care, I guess. But the idea is I want to know what are your kind of more unique thoughts or the way that you look at the speculating market. And I selected this topic with Daniel Probe 186 in mind because in watching his videos, and his is one of the channels where I can almost honestly say I don't think I've missed a single one of his videos because I remember very well when he started, and I have him set to notification. And he doesn't put out a video like every day or every 3 days, and he definitely doesn't do 55-minute videos. Roger. So you put all that together, and it's definitely manageable to watch all his videos. And so, and he speaks about this quite a bit, kind of peppers it in, his thoughts on speculation. And I'd love to get a nice grouping of all those thoughts here on the chat tonight. So thank you for joining us, Daniel. I'm looking forward to that. But before we get to the special guest, we got to start off with really what I consider the salty hors d'oeuvre to the main dish, and that would be DS Comics. I want to know what you think about speculating and the speculation market as it pertains to comics. Hit us with it.
All right. So first of all, let me just say that obviously there's a lot of buying and selling going on in the comic book hobby, and everybody who sells, it's perfectly fine with me. Some people are collectors, they sell doubles, they sell when they upgrade, or they just flip here and there, whatever. And that seems to be like acceptable. And then there's, professional dealers who are at cons and whatnot, and they buy huge lots and then they grade them, and then they basically are flipping them for money, but they have personal collections too, usually with monster books in them. And then you have people who are just going to the LCS and conventions and getting signatures and just, racking up all the moderns, getting variants, getting stuff signed and slabbing. And they purely are doing it just to increase values of books by many multiples, just to flip them and make money. And they'll buy stuff based on movie rumors. And that's generally what we talk about. Spec has come to be a second meaning for buying stuff with movies hopes coming out or news coming out. And those people sort of sometimes have a lesser reputation. People don't like that, and they're badmouthed a lot, and I don't have any problem with it. I mean, the more people that are interested in this hobby, if it's solely to make money, it brings more interest, it brings more money, and it's good for the hobby overall, even if it screws you on a particular book at the LCS because some guy grabbed 3 and the LCS didn't limit it. Whatever. But so spec, I don't really do a lot of spec because spec and investing are different. Spec is buying something that has little or no value currently with the hopes that there will be a huge jump or spike in demand in the short term, and you can dump it for a profit with no expectation, or even you don't even care if that interest stays or if that demand stays. You're just in it for the quick buck. And, that gets sort of a bad rap. I don't have a problem with it. People can do that all they want. It doesn't really affect me, and I don't participate in it. It's not like investing. You buy books that you think are going to go up over time. Like Hulk 181 is an investment. It's not a spec. I don't own any spec books. These are the 3 closest I have to a spec book, and 2 of them are not even specs at all. But Eternals, I guess there's maybe a movie coming out, so maybe there's some spec to it. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it. But I think it's risky because a lot of these books are cheap, and you don't have to throw out a lot of money for them. But people are grabbing them up left and right. And I think a lot of times people are not making money. Even when they seemingly are making money, they've bought so many spec books and so many variants and so many potential movie things that don't pan out or aren't going to pan out, that you're not really, there's not really as much profits being made in spec as a lot of people believe. That's what I think. There's a lot of people buying spec books, and I don't think a lot of people are making money on those. Sometimes you'll see the ones that hit big, and it makes it seem like the spec market is something you should be into or you can make money at it. But what you don't hear about is for every book that somebody makes a huge profit off of speccing on is the other 100 books that they didn't make any money off of. And yeah, so I don't recommend it as a way to make money, but it's fun. And if you like the comics that are involved and the movies, and you like to be in the game, it's fun, and if it's a fun part of the hobby for some people. But if you're just strictly trying to do it for money, I don't recommend it. And people do it for Golden Age books too. There's a spec market in Golden Age books. It has nothing to do with movies, obviously. But I know some of those guys that do that, and I see some of their big losses. They pay up huge for books, and they think it's going to be even huger, and it's not, and they lose hundreds or thousands of dollars. So it doesn't work anywhere very often enough to be a viable financial plan. That's my view of it, and that's basically why I don't do it.
So when you say that, so I guess you're drawing a hard line between investment and speculation. So how are you identifying that a book is an investment and not a speculation? I mean, I know that if somebody says, "Oh, there's a movie coming out," that's obviously going to be a spec book, right? But if you come across a book that you have a feeling will be worth more money later, but maybe not everybody else knows about it, are you grouping that in the investment category or in the spec category?
That's an investment category because, look, there's 2 key elements to spec. One is that when you buy it, it has little or no value presently. So you're basically buying worthless stuff. For the most part, it's worth $1 or $2 or a couple bucks. Whatever you consider to be worthless, $10. If somebody's a high roller and they're buying a $10 book, that would be a spec because it's worth little or no value presently. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is you're anticipating a short-term spike, a major increase, not a double or a triple in value, but something of many multiples of that. Buying a $1 book and hoping it's worth 100 or 150, or buying a $20 book and hoping it's worth 500. In the short term, a major spike because of something that you might know before other people know, or you're anticipating or other people are anticipating. So those are 2 parts of spec. Presently, it's worth little or nothing. And then you're anticipating in the short term a huge spike where you can dump it and make money. Those are the 2 points of spec. Flipping is not spec. I flip books all the time. All 3 of these books I got what I consider cheap. I bought them specifically to flip them in the short term and make money, but it's not a spec. I bought them because they were undervalued by the seller, and I am going to press, clean, get them slabbed, and flip them for money in the short term. It's the same result as what specs hope for, but it's much more concrete, and it's much more proven. And I don't have to wait and hope that things turn out good for an ASM 238 newsstand in near mint. You know what I mean? I already know that's got value. I got it way under value from the seller, and I'll flip it. That's not the same as spec. Investing is, I'll buy a book. It could be short or long term for just overall, generally investing, but it's not related to a particular thing that's going to cause it to spike. It's just something I think that might be a little undervalued right now, and it will be steadily growing in value over time because it has inherent value. That's another thing. Spec doesn't have inherent value a lot. The value of it is not inherent to what it is. It only has value because it's being attached at some point in the future, you hope, to something outside the book. Hulk 181 has inherent value. ASM 238 has inherent value. It's valuable because of what's in it. You know, the movie industry could collapse. This is still going to have value because of what's inside the covers. The spec books, some of them don't have any value inherently at all. The only value they have is outside the book. It's detached from what you own. So you're holding something that's value is totally dependent on something completely outside of the item that you are holding, and you have no control over that. It's very risky, but it doesn't cost a lot to get in. So it's high risk, but there's low cost to put in. So
you mentioned there that would be good to note harder, and one thing would be that the value is known. So in a spec book, there's something of an unknown factor where you don't know, at least you don't know, I guess you never know the top end value of something. Anything can change. But when you purchased it, you generally don't know the sale price of it. You're hoping for a high value. You're hoping for a lot, but you kind of don't know.
Well, yeah, but let me stop you there. I think you do. It's not that you don't know. When you buy a spec book, you should know that it's worthless. In actuality, it's not worth anything. You're hoping that will change in the short term by a lot, but you buying it knowing that it is not worth anything. When I buy this, I know that it is worth something. So even if I pay the same price for an ASM 238 as somebody does for a spec book, I'm buying something that I know currently has value. They're buying something that they know currently has no value. That's important, because if their situation doesn't change, they will have no value. I don't need a situation to change for this. I'm good. I can completely control the value on this because all the value is inside the bag with the board.
Well, what about you're talking about one type of buyer who's basically the comic shopper, or anyone who's already collecting for themselves, or a short-term flipper, I suppose, even if they do sell. But what about the people who are not the first ones to have the knowledge or to have the speculation inherent in themselves? For instance, I've bought a few books that I just personally feel deserve some more attention, and I'm hoping someday the rest of the world agrees with me. To me, that's a speculation, because like you said, maybe it has more value between the covers in my estimation than what other people estimate, and I'm hoping that other people eventually agree with that, but it's not necessarily going to be because of any outside property or other media form takes over and creates a bigger beast.
Yeah, that's not a spec. That's an investment.
That's an investment, I guess.
Yeah,
I
sounds
guess,
like an investment. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at something that's undervalued for a number of reasons. It has inherent value, but people are more interested in other things, and they haven't come around to giving this the attention. I'll give you a perfect example: Fantastic Four 48. That has inherent value. 2 years ago, when you could buy VG copies for $50 or $40, that was an investment when people were buying it. It wasn't a spec. Now, its spike has been monumental over the last 18 months, and that's partly because of movie rumors and the MCU and all that, but it's not the spec on the movies that's raised the value. It's the spec on the movies that's made people look at the book, and a lot of people have now realized, yeah, why the hell are we ignoring this? This is a Silver Age first appearance of a major character. So that value is going to hold, it'll go up and down like any other investment or market, but that's not a spec book. It's just a book that people have ignored for so long. Daredevil #1 is another one. I mean, that's got inherent value that people really haven't come around to. That's a major Silver Age first appearance, and it's an early one. It's not one of the 68 big premiere issue type things either. It's a legit first appearance of a major character in fairly early Silver Age, and that's got investment value. Just because if you figure out something has inherent value before the masses, that's a good investment.
Well, now that's a very good point. Now, Comic Collector is saying something very similar to add to that. And what he's saying is, what about the people who buy it when it spikes and then believing the spec hype, and then the bottom falls out when everyone quits caring about the movie or TV show? Now, the first half of that is what I want to focus on, and that is, we're talking about a different type of buyer now. We're not talking about someone who is buying because they believe in a spec. Now you're talking about someone who's buying something who everyone else is already speculating on, and they're more or less kind of drinking the Kool-Aid. Does that make sense? So what happens with that buyer? How is that person then speculating or investing in that book?
All right, quick
So
thought on
after
this.
it's already a $1 book, but they went on eBay and bought it for $20, and they don't intend to flip it, they're going to hold on to it.
Right.
Then where are you at on that? Is that a spec?
Yeah, so I'll give you my quick thoughts on that, and then I'll shut up and we can hear the thoughts.
I doubt that, but go ahead.
I'll be quick. All right, so if you buy it after the spike is underway, the further underway the spike is, the less you are speccing, and the more you're acting under FOMO, or fear of missing out. So if you get in as it was a $1 book and it's now at $5, you can still spec on it. If it's already hit 150, like people are running and getting Beta Ray Bill, Thor 337 now. They think they're speccing, but they're not. They're just acting impulsively under the fear of missing out and paying an inflated price after the spike is already gone. They're not speccing. They think they're speccing, but they're not. The spec has already jumped the book. Now, it may still go up a little more, but at this point, if you're running out to buy something like that, or if you're running out to buy a Fantastic 448 because of the movie news or any number of other things, you're not speccing, even if you say you are or you think you are. You're acting under the fear of missing out, which is a totally different dynamic. You could still make money. You still might be a good investment. You still might really love the book, and that was next on your list. And now it's just spiked, and you don't care, and you're gonna buy it anyway because that's the book you wanted before, and you still want it. It's not spec though. People say, people are on eBay flying out there to rush and buy Thor 337s at $600 for 9/8. They're not speccing. They think they are, but they're not. It's too late to spec on that book.
That makes sense.
But they don't want to miss out on it, so there's tons of money flying around. And you need that for the spec to work to some degree, because if nobody's going to buy it after the spike, it's not going to work as a spec. So you still need the masses of people who are acting under that human nature of fear of missing out. I want to be part of the crowd, and I don't want to be left out. They'll rush out and buy that book. It's part of human nature to do that, and you need that for the people who bought it early to make money. It's just part of the whole process, but that's not the process I want to be part of at all.
That's fair. Daniel, what do you think? What are some of your thoughts? I know in watching some of your previous videos, you have some definite hard lines on the spec debate. So what do you feel about this?
Yeah, so DS made a lot of good points. I really agree with a lot of what he said with regards to spec versus investment. And I do both. I will find a book that I know has value, and I'll try to get it for as little as possible. And then if it hits, so to speak, and something big happens with it, that investment is, has a little bit of spec to it too, because while it's a book that will always have value, there are points in its life that will have more value than at other points. And so you can buy a book that is an investment book, and it could still have a little bit of spec to it. But there are a lot of different types of speculators out there. Now, I don't consider myself a typical speculator. I don't go to cons, get books signed, buy, I don't pre-order certain books in, bulk, hoping it'll become a really expensive book and then, start flipping them. But, I think that for me, it's part of the hobby. When I look at spec as a really entertaining part of the hobby. For me, when I go out and I do my comic book shopping, I'm looking for books that, like the books that are on screen, and I look for books that have a little bit of speculation going on. And I have so much fun when I'm going through bins. It gives me a little bit extra reason to go through those bins and try to find that that diamond in the rough, at least in that moment, but you do need to know that it's basically worthless unless something big happens. And it's a gamble. It's something that you have to be aware that you may be buying, $1 here, $5 here, $10 here, and then you can end up over the course of 2 months, be putting $200 into speculation books that will go nowhere when you could have taken that $200 and put it into, something a lot bigger that's more of an investment book.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, and that's something that sometimes I struggle with. I've been saving. I know that Roger has those Moon Knight books up there. I've been saving for first Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night 32. But these books in front of on screen right now, kind of fell into my lap, and I couldn't say no. And then you've got a book like this, and this one just arrived today, actually. These are great keys. These are books that were paid in full by speculation. Now, some of it, DS made a good point about some of it just being flipping and not necessarily speculation. Sometimes I'll find a book that is undervalued, and then I will just buy it and flip it right away. And then, there are other times where you're writing, you're on the flip side of the coin and you're selling to the speculator. A great example of that is Immortal Hulk 2. Now, when it comes to speculation, you can love it or hate it, but you can definitely benefit from it. And what I've done is I will, ride the market, so to speak. So, I had a couple of copies of Immortal Hulk 2. It got really hot. And then other people, you call them speculators, you can call them investors, or you can call them, the FOMO crowd, people who just have that serious fear of missing out, or just want to get in on something before it goes up even more. And so what I'll do is I'll sell to that crowd, and then I'll take those funds and I'll put it into the books that I want, which, unfortunately I've been putting it into too many books because I'm nowhere near where I need to be for that Werewolf by Night 32. But as a result, I've got a lot of fun books. Now, I'm going to show just an example of a spec book that a lot of people are talking about right now. And this is Strange Tales, first appearance of Brother Voodoo. You can argue that this was a book that should have had some value. And if you got this for, 30 or 40 bucks 3-4 months ago, it was a decent price. Now, this book, with news of him possibly being in the next Doctor Strange movie, and then maybe taking over the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme, and then maybe having a spin-off from there, this book is starting to really heat up. Now, I will have no problem selling this when it peaks and buying it back in a few years when it drops again. And that's how I do things. So I'm not really the typical speculator who will just go out and buy everything like years in advance, hoping that one day it will catch on. When things start to get warm, I'll pull the trigger, and then when it gets really hot, I'll sell. And so I'm kind of riding the wave a little bit. And for me, it's been really successful. I've been able to find some really, really good things as a result of this strategy. But there are definitely, different types of speculators out there. And when it comes to the speculators that are just buying up, 10 or 15 copies of a book at an LCS and not really letting anybody, have a shot at one copy, I think they start to give that part of the community a bad rap. And, it may be justifiable, it may be justified to have, that they have a bad rap for doing such things. But, some people do it for a living. I mean, this is really their livelihood, and they're going to go out and they're going to get, as many copies of something that they can, knowing that they can make a profit on it. But then it becomes a little, I think it muddies the water a little bit, because for many people this is just a fun hobby, and they want to get their one copy and go home and read it and keep it in their collection. So speculation it's a tricky subject. And if we went through all the different types of speculators, I mean, we wouldn't have. I don't think we'd have enough time, because there are really so many different types. There are people that spend every day researching, and I'm in a bunch of groups that and I get alerts all the time, where people come up with things that you read some of the spec stuff, and you're like, well, where are they getting this from? I mean, but sometimes it makes sense, and you're like, what, maybe I'll pull the trigger on this, and if it costs you $1 or $2, it's not a big deal as long as you have it, and
I think that's important too. Is if the primary bulk of your budget is moving towards pure speculation, then like DS said, you're probably having more losses than wins at that point, and you end up without any money.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
For
if
sure.
you're converting it like you are to more, if you're taking, the occasional spec book and flipping it and not hoarding it, which I think when we think of a classic speculator, that's someone who's really amassing as many copies of a book as they can, hoarding them as hard as they can, and maybe they sell it when the price goes up. But I think one of the biggest downfalls of the speculator, just in their mind, if you will, is that they're not good at identifying when the time to sell is. And there's lots of people getting stuck with tons of copies of a book that turns out they missed the peak on, and they should have been a flipper and not a speculator. And like you said, selling to the speculators that's what I do mostly too. And you mentioned two things I want to comment on too. When I first came back into the hobby, it was during the Red Goblin craze. So you mentioned how to other people, people that are running into the LCSs and grabbing every copy of a book that they see, to buy them all and try and hoard them or flip them online. That was one of my first experiences in a comic shop as a collector, as an adult collector. And it was really hard because that didn't happen when I was a kid. There wasn't, it didn't exist. But now it's like, what is going on? I went in, I was like, you know what? I remember reading Spider-Man comics when I was young. I'll pick up a couple of Amazing Spider-Mans. They're like sold out. And I said, well, are you going to get more? No, not for another week. And it won't be the right print and all this stuff. I said, well, why didn't you buy more? They said, well, 2 guys came in this morning and bought them all. I said, why would somebody need 15 copies of the same book? Like all of that was so new to me. So when I first started back collecting, the idea of a flipper, a speculator, or anybody that sold a book on eBay, I didn't know what any of that was. And they all looked the same to me, like a greedy person who was just buying them all themselves, It's like somebody running in and buying all the milk and then opening up a milk cart outside. It's like, well, I bought all the milk. You can't get any in there, but I'll sell you mine for $1 more. It just had that same kind of dirty feeling to me, to it. Then now, of course, I've changed over this time, and I fully understand all that's going on. But the other thing I was going to mention is the only other speculating that I generally do, since you mentioned Immortal Hulk #2, the first appearance of Doctor Who Cares. That book. So my speculating strategy was, at that time, and it still kind of is, although I don't spend as much time on it as you said. Some people spend a ton of time, is to identify a book that had an A cover by a popular artist in the #1 and the #2. So, and that seems like an odd strategy, and it's a very odd formula, I know. But in the past year, there's only been a couple of runs that actually hit those marks.
Mm-hmm.
And Immortal Hulk was one of them. I said, well, here's an Immortal Hulk #1, right? It's a popular character. It has a popular artist. And if you do pre-orders, which is what I was doing at the time, then I would wait until that number one was already, the pre-order was out, and then the next month's catalog was out, and then you could still go back and pre-order that previous month's catalog, right? So once I saw the second book come out and had the same cover artist as the first book, and it was the A cover and a popular artist, that tells me that the publisher is putting all their eggs in one basket and that they are pushing the book. And I feel like if the marketing team and the publishers and everybody's pushing that book and they believe in the book, then that's a good book to grab. And maybe, you know, for me, if I like it, keep it. And if I don't like it, flip it, and I should be able to make money. And like I said, there's been maybe 2 DC titles that worked with. And the only Marvel book that it worked with all last year was Immortal Hulk. Because they change artists so frequently. So it's interesting that you had mentioned that, because that is a classic, you know, spec book. Everybody wanted it, and now you can. It's not as high as it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that Immortal Hulk 2 was selling for like, you know, $150 in near mint condition. It's ridiculous, and there's tons of copies out there, and that's something we haven't talked about, and that's scarcity. You know, if you're spec'ing on a modern book, there's no scarcity there at all. You know, you can talk about variants and things of that nature. That's more flipping and investment. But if you're just specking on a modern book, there's no scarcity to that.
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny that you mentioned the I have a similar strategy. I like your strategy, but I have a similar strategy in that I believe that if you ever get a first appearance in issues 2 or 3, usually what happens is with most of these publishers, what they'll do is, you know, they'll have their print runs for issue 1, which is usually higher, and then what they do for issues 2 and 3 is they usually cut them in half or so. So the print runs are always going to be lower on numbers 2 and 3. Now, even though on certain runs there may still be a ton of books out there, there's still less than there were initially. And when you get a first appearance in issues 2 or 3, generally something big happens with the book. And there are a bunch of examples this year of that happening. There's, you know, Immortal Hulk 2, there's X-Men Red 2. I think that was Trinary. You have Venom 3, you had Null, you have, even in DC, you have Naomi. Now, there's also in Justice League Dark, you had the Upside Down Man, which, you know, and some of these characters, and some of these characters have not taken off, so nobody's really talking about them. But if something happens with any of these characters, you know, you have to believe that they will go up in value the same way that Immortal Hulk 2 did, because what happens is the publisher will wait until, you know, issues 2 and 3, and then they'll, you know, and the comic book, it's really the comic book shops that, you know, will order less because they don't want to get stuck with a ton of books. And so what they do is they order less after issue 1, and then by issue 3, once that one comes out, they have an idea of what the response is, what the feedback is, and, you know, how well received the book is. And by then they start to up the print runs if they're selling. And that happened with Naomi. If you notice, Naomi 4 and 5. With Immortal Hulk 2, it took a little bit. With Immortal Hulk, it took longer. You know, it wasn't until like issue 8 or 9 when people started to catch on to 2, but the orders were already in. And so, you know, up until like 12 and 13, people, you know, there was a lot of demand for those books because the print runs were lower. So, you know, that's something that people should definitely be, if you're going to speculate, you know, you should have some kind of system in place. You know,
system, because if you're purely reactive, then you're overspending, like DS said. You're throwing money at it, hoping to not miss out. Yeah. Right.
And then it becomes, you know, you want to be ahead of the game as much as you can. You know, and you don't want to be spending money you don't have, because this is, you know, this is definitely not going to make anybody rich. There are people, you know, I know people are worried about a repeat of the 90s, but let's face it, you've got I'm sure Roger and all of his garage sale runs sees boatloads of 90s books, right?
Oh
because because the and Bob, this is what you were talking about with regards to hoarding versus flipping. Those people got stuck with these books. I went to a garage sale. There was a guy who had literally a garage with with long boxes full of the same issue, and they just had a long box of random issues, and it went nowhere. And he was selling these books for like a quarter, 50 cents, whatever it was. And you don't want to do that. That's not how you speculate. You
Yeah.
want to ride the wave, you want to flip it. But if you do it right and you have fun with it, it could be a really fun part of the hobby. You need to really enjoy the hunting, and with all of the apps today, you've got the Key Collector app, and you've got different websites like Comics Heating Up, and there's Comic Book Invest. There are a bunch of sources today that are also driving the speculation game right now. And so you want to make sure that you're careful about what you're doing. And if you have the funds and you're enjoying it, why not? But if you're doing this to get rich, you're gonna get especially if you're not careful and you're not coming up with some kind of system, you're gonna lose a lot more than you're gonna win.
Yeah, I agree. Roger, what do you think
About
any of the speculating market and how it pertains to comics, and whether that is something that you dabble in, or if you have any disdain for it? We'd like to hear that too. Although most of the salt has already been kicked over by DS.
Yeah.
He just spreads it like a slug hater. But
yeah, DS I thought was very thorough in his analysis, and I don't find, I can't think of anything he said that I really disagree with. Couple things though. I do play the speculation game at sort of at a penny stock level.
Mhm.
If I find, like what you're seeing here on my screen, if I find something that is a first appearance or an early appearance and I can pick it up for less than $1, I do.
Oh man.
Because there's very little investment, and like DS said, it's high risk, but the investment is so little that the payoff can be prodigious or it can be nil. But to me, it's not a big difference between one and the other because I have nothing into it. And if everything goes wrong, I'll put it out as a prize or an AOK or something like that. So it's win-win as far as I'm concerned. I do try, and I know that Daniel knows, I do try to, when I do buy things in bulk or in lots, I try to build in something there that I can sell and recoup some of the money that I invested in the comics that I do get. And that's something that I try to do frequently, but sometimes there's just nothing there. It's a good deal and you buy it and it's something that goes into my collection, and that's the long and the short of it. But I do dabble in speculation again at a certain level, right? Because I don't hoard things. I'm not a speculator as far as like Daniel was saying, that guy with all a garage full of 90s stuff, same issue. By the way, true story. Back in the 80s, I was going to college in Miami, and there was a guy who had a class with me, and he lived right down, 2 blocks over. And he had a stepfather, and he had a garage full. Not a garage full, but he had about 5 or 6 long boxes, and he only had 2 issues in them. And I wish today that I had gotten more. She-Hulk #1, Nova #1. All mint condition. So I tried to get a hold of him a few years ago, but he moved.
I'd say so.
But that guy was his father-in-law was obviously a speculator, and if he held on to those for any time, any period of time, he made out pretty well. But those stories are few and far between. The vast majority. I see the Valiant kind of dynamic playing out again. And in the late 80s, those Valiant, the pre Unity Valiants were hot. When I was working cons, we couldn't keep them. We sold some for $150, and now you can pick them up in a quarter bin. So it's a dangerous play. It's a dangerous game to play at that level. And I, of course, like everybody else here, don't do it. It's just not worth it. There are much more safer investments, long-term investments that you can make, bonds, etc. Don't do it. If you're doing it for fun, if you're doing it because you like the issue, if you're doing it because it's something that gives you entertainment or value, or it's something that you enjoy, great. But use only mad money on it. Do not use anything that has your bills or any other income stream that is necessary, because I've seen people do it. And as we know, lots of people have lost their lunch over the death of the Superman era in the early 90s, and the Valiant and all the special and blingy covers of the early 90s. That was a bloodbath, and I lived through that, and I don't want that to be repeated. But I don't see anything wrong with you using, speculation being no evidence, but you have some kind of hint or some kind of gut feeling that something's going to come about that's going to seismically shift that comic into a more valuable one. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Again, only if you do it on a very low level. If you're paying $500, $1,000 because you think it's going to double your money next year, I think you're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think that there's something that's missing there. And what you're talking about, Roger, you're talking about kind of stuff that you collect already. You're always looking for these types of books. But when let's say you come across, 5 of one of those books, do you buy all 5, or do you just get one for your collection?
No, I might buy 2, and that's it. I might buy 2, but I don't I don't do that. I mean, again, to me, it's like you should leave stuff for other people too. You know what I mean? I mean, if it's pure speculation, I mean, obviously, if it's an undervalued book, that's a whole different dynamic, right? If you see, 5 Strange Tales 169s for $5, yeah, I'm going to buy all 5, and I'm going to distribute some here to my buddies on YouTube. All right, but if you're just speculating, and it's a commensurate value with what the market is now, I would not buy multiples. No.
Hey, how many Werewolf by Night 32s do you have?
I only have the one. I only have the one. That came out of a quarter bin in the early 80s, buddy. That was the only one I found back then.
Oh man.
When it comes to buying multiple copies of things, I have a probably unpopular view of this, and I'm going to throw it out there. And I don't care. This is how I feel about it. But look, it's hard to sort of see both sides of this, because on the one part of what we do, it's a hobby, and people collect what they like, and it obviously all costs money. And the part of the hobby is collecting. The other part of the hobby is a business that's purely money-based, and it's just capitalistic and free market. Now, those two things completely overlap. Whereas if you're a collector and you want to buy something, you have to pay money to somebody, and that's part of the business end of it. If you're going into a comic shop and buying all 5 issues they have on the rack, and then some other collector wants one for their collection, they can't get it because you bought all 5. I mean, that's the business and the hobby, again, interacting in a way that pisses off one person but not the other. So I don't have a problem with it. If you go into a store of any kind and you are going to buy something from the store that's in business of selling them, and you are going to put out your money to buy those things to sell them on the little business that you are doing to other people who are buying them from you as customers of your business, it's all part of the business. If I'm going into a store and there's 5 items for $1 that I know I can sell for 100 each, I'll buy all 5. And I don't care if the person behind me is pissed off. This is how it goes. I mean, that's a business. Now, if I go to, I don't know, if I'm dealing with another collector and they have 3 of them, I'll be like, you know what, just give me one. And, this other collector I know wants one. Or I'll buy 2 because I know a friend of mine who collects wants one, and I'll give him one. That's different. Then I'm doing it as part of the hobby. But when I have my business hat on and not my hobby hat on, I'll buy them all because the store is in business to sell them. I'm in business to flip them, and it's up to the sellers to determine how their process of selling is. I think an LCS should limit 2 per customer, no matter what it is. You should never be allowed to buy more. If I ran an LCS, I would limit 2 per customer, no matter what it was. 2 per customer. That would be it. But if a store's not going to do that and I'm in there to buy stuff and they're going to let me buy all 10 of these issues for $10 that I can sell for $1,000, I'll buy all 10. Now, people will hate me because of that. I get it. But I mean, that's part of the business end of it. And I'm looking out for myself with the business hat on. I'm in a store that's in business, and the LCSs are not the most spiritual places in the world either. They will have no qualms about ripping you off. If you walk in with a Hulk 181 in a near mint condition and you don't know what it is, and you're like, yeah, I don't know. I found this in my garage. I don't know anything about comics. What is this something you guys be interested in? And be like, oh, they would try to contain themselves. Like, yeah, we're interested in that. How much do you want for it? I don't know, like $5. You give me $5 for it? They'd be like, yeah, we can do that. And they give a $5 bill and she walks out. They're not going to be like, no, that's worth way more. And the comic shops are not going to do that. Now, if somebody that I knew called me because they know I'm in the comics and asked me about it, I'd be like, yeah, that's worth a lot of money. Let me take a look at it. And I would make them an offer if they wanted to sell it where I could make a decent profit, but they could also get something legit out of it. Whereas if I go to a yard sale and I find an AF-15 in there for $1, I'll buy it for $1. I'm not going to tell them because they have put themselves out with the business hat on. They put all their stuff out in the garage or on the front lawn or whatever, and they're in business to sell. They've opened a store for the day. So what they price things is what they price them. It's not my job to help them run their business. I'm the buyer and they're the seller, and it's a total business relationship. If there's a personal relationship or sort of the hobby hat relationship, that's totally different to me. So I try to compartmentalize the two. And when it's in the hobby, when I have my hobby hat on, everybody likes me and I'm a cool guy. When I have my business hat on, everybody hates me and I'm the biggest asshole ever. I'm a jerk, and that's fine. I totally get that. And I wear both hats with equal vigor, so I'm fine with it. But it's helpful when you're out there in this hobby / business to know which hat you have on and to be able to act accordingly and have the proper expectations of what you're going to encounter. If you're wearing your hobby hat and you're running around in the business area of this, you're going to be disappointed and annoyed and frustrated all the time. You're going to hate people like me. But if you put your business hat on and go out into the business side as hobby and act accordingly and have expectations that are relevant to that, like, this is a hot book, I want to flip it or whatever, other people are flipping it, I'm going to run to the store as soon as the LCS opens, try to get one. Know that the person in front of you might have bought all of them, even if you're second in line. Don't have an expectation that guy's a jerk because you put your business hat on to go out and acquire something from a store on the business side. If you got your hobby hat on and you're going to come over here and look at my collection, we might trade some books. Totally different ballgame. So that's how I feel about it. And I know that's unpopular. And like I said, when I have my business hat on, a lot of people hate me. And, I'm cool with it. But that's how it is. And I try to be realistic about it. You can't just be like, I'm pissed off because I need that for my run and now it costs me $200 because of speculators. Well, I mean, the business and the hobby overlaps. That's how if you're trying to collect something that's now worth $200, it's going to cost you $200. That's just the nature of it.
I can see that. I'm not. It doesn't anger me when people do that. Of course, like I said, when I first started, it did, but it doesn't anger me anymore when no matter what hat someone else is wearing, I understand because I'm sometimes wearing either of those at the same time or at different times. So I get it. I do get it. It's hard because you have, or I would, or do sometimes have this anger and this frustration when you are that next person in line who didn't get there in time. And then, the worst thing you can do is say something like, oh, you're going to get all those. And then you get some kind of smart remark like, you should get up earlier. You got to hustle like me, bro. You know what I mean? Because that's like, so there's a little word of advice. Like, don't ever do that. I've never done it, but I've seen plenty of people do it. Get all ticked off and mad. And then it comes kind of like a, match of some sort. But, I'm telling you, if you've not been in that situation, you'll probably eventually find yourself in that situation where there is something you want and the person next to you got it before you did. Roger talks all the time about, pushing people by the hip at garage sales down in Florida, about how merciless, and you get the fattest guy with no deodorant, the hairiest back and arms, wearing his wife beater t-shirt, and he's hasn't bathed in 3 days just to make sure nobody stands next to him, and he's blocking 6 boxes and only looking at one at a time.
You got it.
Yeah, now I'm a little different when it comes to, look, LCSs I don't have a high opinion of, partly because they are sort of willing victims of the Diamond, Marvel, DC torture chamber. They willingly put themselves in there to be tortured, and then they complain about it and sort of put it on their customers. That's, you all need to band together and get Diamond and Marvel and DC to change their ways so they're not raping you every day. That doesn't have anything to do with me. Don't come at me about, I need to have more on my pull list. That's BS. But at cons, you've got dealers who are legit. You've got a collection. It's an event. It's a gathering of fellow-minded collectors in the hobby. And even though there's business going on, I will not be the one to push people out of the way to get to that long box that I know has a gem in the middle of it. That's not something where if a dealer has a whole bunch of stuff, I might not buy all of them. If the guy behind me is like, oh man, I want one of those, I'll be like, yeah, here, man, have one. At an LCS, I'd be like, yeah, sorry, I'm here before you. I'm sorry. But at a con, I won't do that. I feel like that's more of a spiritual sort of gathering of collectors. But at LCS, there's a lot of problems going on with LCSs. And part of it is LCSs are sort of turning their pain onto the customers, and they will try to get stuff off of you without giving you anywhere close to a fair price even. And they will jack up prices on books that came out yesterday if the eBay price is up. And I'm not going to go to eBay counter price checks either. So when I go into an LCS, it's every man for himself. I'm in there for business, and if I can, find whatever, I will. But I won't do that at a con. I won't do it if I'm just with another collector. But I'll do it at a yard sale. I'll do it at an LCS. Bob, when you gave me a heads up on something, that Captain Marvel long hair variant at Walmart, I got my car. I drove to both Walmarts I have. One Walmart had none of them. The other had two per store. I bought both of them. And then I came back and listed them on eBay and like tripled my money on them or whatever. Yeah, that was fine. And then I heard, people were complaining. They went to Walmart. They couldn't find one. They were all pissed off because people bought them all. Yeah, I was one of the ones that bought them all. There was 2 of them. I heard it. That was the last time I spec'd on something. And yeah, I went there. I bought both of them. I came back. I slapped them on eBay and I made a profit. Whatever. I mean, that was Walmart and eBay and me. So you can't go wrong. You know what I mean? I don't have to look out for anybody in that situation.
Yeah, I agree. Well, obviously, because I did the same thing. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, and Alberto Pinedo is saying he goes to a LCS where they will ban you if they see you on your phone checking prices. I don't want to get us banned from YouTube, so I'll just try to say that it fires me up to no end to hear a store acting like that. And it's rich. I'll tell you, it's rich. When they will do the same damn thing at the counter. If he goes up there with a book, he found the back issues that they realized that they forgot to price it right. Where they're going to go right to eBay.
Oh yeah.
Look, I can bring my phone into the store. You're selling goods and you're selling goods all over the place. There's thousands and thousands of them. The prices are all over the place. Yeah, I'm going to check my phone to see where it's at. And if you have a problem with that later, I'll never come back.
Yeah. And that's pretty much the last thing you've said to every LCS in your area.
Well, the closest LCS I haven't been there in probably 2 years at this point.
Wow.
And there were a couple things. The one time they said, I heard them a couple times, that the people who work there, if there's a rare variant that comes in, they will take it for themselves. It doesn't even reach the shelf. So right there, that's not how you run business. I would fire an employee that did that, but apparently that's how they run that place. They will upcharge things if the price goes up. They will check prices on eBay, and yeah, it's I don't go there anymore. But when I'm out of town, I always like to. I love going to a comic shop. I love it, and I miss it. But the one I have here is just, it's not what I think a comic shop should be. It's not even close. When I go out of town, I'm so excited to go check out the local comic shops. And there are some I go to that I just cannot wait to go back to the area to go back to that comic shop. So I'm not against comic shops. I support comic shops, but they've got to sort of get their shit together and grow up a little about being a bit of a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I've there are two LCSs that I go to here, and there's a big difference in how they treat their customers. The when I first got back into collecting, I used to go to this other one in Long Island, and they would mark up variants, like cover price variants, non-incentive variants, and they would do, a lot of nonsense in my opinion. And I would pay in the beginning because I just got back into collecting. I didn't even know, but then I started reading in the groups how people look down on that if their LCS did it. So I started to question it. I started to look for alternative stores. But that LCS was good for going through their bins and finding like in their dollar bins keys and first appearances. That's the stuff I like to collect. And recently I went in there, and then one of the guys there, who's kind of an ass, he saw me doing that, and then he went behind the counter, took out a short box, and he's like, and he brings it over to me. He goes, "Hey, I think you might be looking for the stuff that's in here." And it was basically as if he took a key collector app, went through their entire collection of bins and took out anything that was worth something and marked it up to pretty much eBay prices. And he had this like smug look on his face. And that LCS is actually not doing so great. Every time I'm in there, I hear mumblings of them, the owner asking how many sales and like, talking down to the workers and, basically telling them that, things are tight and, talking about hours and things like that. And this other LCS that I go to, it's a completely different experience. I mean, it's, everybody's so friendly there. I've got my pulls with them. They're not looking to, mark up everything for you. They've even sold me incentive variants at cover price. And this LCS just opened a second location. And that's testament to, if you treat your customers well and you stick to being a comic book store, for collectors and, not looking to, comic book stores shouldn't really be speculators. They should just stick to what they do and, let the occasional person come in and find a gem at cover price or, in a dollar bin. And that's what they do. And, they've just expanded into a second location. And it's the only comic book store that I know of that has actually expanded into a new location, whereas you're hearing about stores closing left and right. For a lot of it is because of the reasons that were, that DS outlined.
Yeah, I don't understand why a comic shop wants to be eBay. If you want to be eBay, use eBay to sell your books. If you want to be a comic shop, be a comic shop. And a comic shop is what you're talking about, Daniel. Somebody that has books for sale, the price is the price, and it entices people to come to the shop and dig for gold. I know if there's a shop, I know, and I have shops like that, I know there's no gold there, because if there is gold there, it's priced as gold or platinum, like it's even worse,
Well, my LCS here, and I haven't, maybe they've changed the policy in the last 2 years since I stopped patronizing the establishment, but anything that was valued at $20 high kept in the back. So when you walk in and you see wall-to-wall long boxes, and everything in all those boxes is priced less than $20. So if it's more than $20, it's in the back and you can't see it. You can't go back there. They won't pull out a box. You can ask them if they have an issue. They'll go back and check and come back out and tell you if they have it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's messed up.
And the people that work there they're cool. I mean, I always, there's cool people and everything, but the way the business is being run, it's like, look, you need to provide a good environment. You need to provide good customer service, and you need to have sort of like competitive pricing. And that's different for every industry. But in the comic world, that means competitive pricing is new books are new books, cover price for the week at least. You know what I mean? No matter what it is. And then have good back issues, fairly priced, be willing to wheel and deal, be willing to please the comic book customers. The way to please customers if going to Walmart is low prices, okay? Have everything that a person needs for their home and their life and have it at low prices. That's how Walmart pleases customers. The way comic shops please customers in the comic industry is wheel and deal, cut a break, recognize customers who spend a lot of money there. Don't jack up prices on new stuff. There's a way to treat a comic book customer that's not the same way as treating a Walmart customer. And some LCSs are trying to take out their frustration on the customers by treating them piss poorly because they're not making any money because Diamond is ripping them off through Marvel and TC monopoly. Yeah, well, don't take it out on me. That's why so many comic shops are closing. So, and then they spend more time price checking stuff on eBay than they do out there trying to aggressively buy lots from other collectors and stuff to add interesting, unique inventory to their store. There's nothing worse for me than going into a comic book store that has back issues for $1 and it's mostly stuff from like 1990 and later. With a couple bronze issues in there. I like holes in the wall, dark places, cluttered with cool, old, unique items. That's an experience I dig. They also will have the new stuff and they'll have trades and toys and games and stuff like that. But then they're always finding interesting stuff out there. They're always, hustling out there to find stuff to buy, to add to their inventory, to make it's a unique experience. You go in there and there's a cool factor to it. And they have old stuff, they have new stuff, they have interesting items and cool books. And that's, they're being creative. They're trying to, you can feel that they're really trying to give the customer a good experience. Those are the places I like.
Yeah. And, also how they choose to create their prices too matters too. I've got a great back issue shop that you would love, DS. It's nothing but back issues. The only moderns they have are if they've bought a collection. And it contains moderns, but they don't order anything. They don't have a pull list. There's no pre-orders, nothing like that. Everything is just long box after long box on the floors, on the tables, on the walls, and boxes, corners of things, and everything is for sale and everything's priced to move. And every now and then you come across a book that's a little too expensive for your taste, but maybe it's not for somebody else's. And then they run sales, and about once a quarter, everything's 35% off. So even that book that was too expensive is now priced right, at least. So
well, you can run a successful comic book store without ordering anything from Diamond. I truly believe that. Now, you're not going to get people that want the new, Immortal Hulk variant or whatever's out. I don't follow the new stuff. They're not going to come there because you're not having that. But that comic book business is liberated from the Diamond torture chamber. Do you know what I mean? They don't depend on that. They don't have to buy a whole bunch of what are essentially future back issue stock that's just taking up space and losing them money. They don't have to do all that to get the variant or whatever to fulfill whatever Diamond things there are. They can just buy and sell stuff that's, outside of the Diamond arena, and they're sort of liberated from that. And so it naturally gives rise to better customer owner relationship, I think.
Yeah. I think
but I don't collect moderns. I'm not into moderns. I don't know much about them. So everything I say on the show, whenever it involves any type of modern comics, take what I say with a grain of salt, because I really don't know what I'm talking about half the time, because I don't know anything about moderns. There could be a gold mine of awesome stuff out there. I don't know. So don't go by me and stop buying moderns or going to your comic book store. I mean, I don't know anything about the modern market. I know how it works, but none of the product is stuff that I buy or read. So, there's that.
Now, Bob, you said something which I want to clarify, because I'm not sure if what you said was true. Did you say that the modern right? Did you say that the modern comics, that they're overprinted, like that there's no scarcity?
No, what I'm saying is that when they do the speculations on these books, that there's generally a ton of these books. So I know that for some people in whatever area they're in, they have to turn to the secondary market to get a book. I'm aware that that happens. But the reality generally is that if it's a modern book and everybody knows that it's going to be a big book, people run out there and grab it But if you just wait a minute, they come back around. I remember when everybody was picking up the Spider-Man 800s. I saw 5 of them in a dollar bin, different variants in a dollar bin last week.
Right.
They make it to the dollar bins generally. The modern comics make it down the price scale, but everyone's in such a hurry to buy them at cover price, and then worse, to buy them for 3-4 times cover price. But there's so many of them out there that they slip through the cracks, and if you're a hunter of any kind, you can still pick those books up. So I guess what I was trying to say at that time was we were talking about kind of fear of missing out, and I don't really get I get a little bit more like maybe fear of missing out on the Beta Ray Bill, or something like that, or something that's out of print. They're not making any more. It's been gone for a while. But a book that everyone knows is coming out next week and everyone's really excited about, there's tons of those books. You're not going to miss out on that book. You don't have to pay 3 times cover price to get that book. But but I still might be wrong. Go ahead, Roger.
No, I was just wondering because I've seen, I'm not going to say which, but I've seen videos on YouTube where certain channels are saying, hey, you got to get this before it runs out because it's low printed. There's only 30,000 print run or whatever. And I just thought that, because the modern market has contracted to a great degree. For example, when I was collecting comics in the 70s, if you sold 120,000 comics, you were canceled. That was cancellation point right there. Most comics sold in the 200,000 range and up to 500,000. Not most, but most at least 200,000. So I was just wondering with the contracted market whether these lower tiered titles, if something does occur in them that a first appearance or some kind of event that kind of sneaks up on somebody, would there be more demand than there would be supply?
I don't think there. Look, it's sort of a misnomer, or maybe I'm looking at it as a golden age collector. But when something has a 30,000 print run and people are saying low print run and the price spikes because there's not a lot of them out there because there's only 30,000 of them. When a book comes out or a variant, say, and there's a 30,000 print run, it sounds low in the grand scheme of things, but it's really not, because 50% or more of those, probably 75%, honestly, from the initial purchase of those 30,000, or when they went out, the first hands they got into, 75% of those end up quickly right back on the market, either raw or in slabs on eBay or wherever. So, the first 30,000, when they first go out, if you miss it, you can just wait until the cycle hits, and 75% of them then go back out. And then a whole bunch of those, 75% of that 75% is bought by people that missed out the first time that want to flip it. So there's this like decreasing 75% of each sale lot of those that's being resold, and you can always get back in on it. And that dwindles down until pretty much interest in that has moved on to something else. And now people are more interested in something else. And then a whole bunch of all those issues that have been flipped back and forth flood back onto the market, and then they're on eBay. And now people are trying to move it to get their money to go on to something else. And you have competitive pricing where people are pricing themselves down further and further, and then you can pick it up cheap 6 or 12 months later. With a 30,000 print run, there's always tons of them out there to buy. Maybe not at your local LCS, but I mean, you can go on eBay for sure and always find it. I'm trying to find books on my want list where there's, 5 existence, and a lot of them are just in black hole collections where they've entered the collection and nothing escapes, and they'll be there forever.
Oh, the Metarog collections. Yep, the Metarog.
So, I've got sort of a collection like that too. I've got black hole books in my collection. They enter and then they don't ever leave. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I mean, 30,000 print run. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles only had 2,000 print run.
Yep. Right.
And those are tougher to find. But if you have the money and you want a TMNT 1, they're not hard to find. And there's only 2,000 of them in existence, from 30-something years ago. And you can still there's probably 1 or 2 on eBay right now. They pop up in auctions. I mean, they're not hard to find, and there's only 2,000 total. You're talking a 30,000 print run of something that just got printed. I mean, you should be able to track down 9/8 very easily for many years to come on a 30,000 print run. I don't. That's low compared to, you know, a 200,000 print run, sure, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, most of those are being flipped back and forth all the time. That there's the same one of those 30,000 is ending up back on the market numerous times in the same year. So there's effectively more than 30,000 purchases of those 30,000 books, because some of them have multiple sales and buys on the same exact copy across eBay. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of opportunities to buy a 30,000 print run. Is not a hard book to find ever.
Man, I always laugh at people as people mention like store variants and things like that. And I generally laugh at stuff like that too, because I do pick up some variants. And when I do, they're like 350 print run, 450 print run. A big variant run for me is 750, you know, short of that, you know, people are like, oh, there's only 30,000 of these. I'm like, give me a break, you know?
Yeah, I mean, 350, 500, 700, those are low print runs, but they're still going to be easy to find because always, every book that's out there, there could be 20 in existence. Half of them are owned by people who are trying to sell it to make money. So half of them are always going to be on the market. You know what I mean?
That's exactly it. That's, you know, a lot of people think that they can like outsmart the system, you know, because, oh, this book has a low print run, and so I have to get in on this, and I'm, you know, the smartest person in the world because I know that this book has a 30,000 print run, and you know, nobody else knows. But you know, and the publishers don't know. They don't know what they've got. They, you know, truth is they do. They know exactly what they're doing, and they've got these print runs at these numbers for a reason, because that's what is, you know, the reason that these print runs are so low. And 30,000 is on the lower end, but even on the higher end, you're not talking about, you know, 200,000 print runs. You're talking about, you know, on the high end, maybe 100,000 on like, you know, Action 1000 or something. But the reason these print runs are set at these numbers is because that's where the demand is, right? And the majority of these books that end up on the secondary market are speculators pretty much, or flippers selling to other speculators and flippers. And occasionally, you know, an honest, you know, bystander will get caught in the crossfire and they'll pull the trigger on a book that they're paying way too much on. You know, but that's, you know, part of the speculation game is you need to be aware of these print runs. You need to be aware of the numbers. Another point that I can make with regards to the speculation thing is, you know, when a book has a 30,000 book print run, but it's got 4 covers, it's generally split evenly unless one is an incentive, but assuming they're all cover price variants. And a lot of these books have like 7 covers today. And so if it's got, you know, a 30,000 book print run, and then you divide that by let's keep the math simple, by 5, right? So now each cover has a print run of about 6,000, and then cover A is usually the one that heats up, and that's the one that people want. And so now there's a first appearance. So now you've got this book that has a first appearance that has a 30,000 print run, but the cover that people want really has a 6,000 book print run. You know, that's a book that you may want to pull the trigger on and then flip it. But, you know, make no mistake, it's not a long-term investment. None of these modern books are really long-term investments, in my opinion. I try to ride the wave so that I could buy, you know, older books. I went into bronzer. I've started to go into silver now. But, you know, if you're going to be doing speculation, you should definitely be aware of a lot of factors. Don't just, you know, go by news and make decisions based on that. And definitely don't go by the trends. Don't, like, you know, if a book is approaching $150, it may be a good time to kind of wait it out. I can't tell you how many books I've seen that were going for $30, $40 raw that you can get a 9.8 slabbed copy of for like $25 now. I mean, you know, everything goes up and down all the time. So if you're going to speculate, be smart about it. Know the print runs, know the numbers. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you want to win at it, you know, it's definitely don't just listen to what people tell you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
very
good.
Excellent.
And as always, if there was a string of cliches we can throw out there, one would be collect what you love and it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Buy what you love and everything will be great. So yeah, there's always that. So, and if you think a book's going to be a spec book, don't take it to the beach with you because sand is hard on books. I'll tell you right now, that's a true story. So, there you go, guys. An hour and a half. I think the horse is dead, but we had a fun time beating it. What do you think?
So I don't know if you guys saw. I typed it in the chat, but just so you guys know, here on the panel, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first prints. There's 17 of them on eBay right now. So not a hard book to find, and that's a 2000 print run from 1984 or something. So even that is easy to find. It's expensive, but it's not hard to find. So
There you go.
Yep, you're right.
All right, guys. Well, it's been fun. Thank you to our special guest, especially Daniel Probe 186. If you're not subbed to him, sub him up, check him out. It's got great content, and you can hear the magical sounds of New York City in the background, and it's just fantastic. So check him out.
Sirens.
Oh, everything. There's babies crying.
Traffic.
Yeah, I love it. So thank you again for being on with us.
We got 2 probes.
Yeah, we got 2 of them. He fell out. He came back in.
Oh, okay.
So, and then also I want to thank, of course, DS Comics. You want to kind of just tell me you're welcome and then say your goodbyes?
yeah, I got to run, so I'm going to say my goodbye and then I'm going to bolt here. But yeah, awesome show, Probe. Thanks for being here. Really added a lot to our discussion, and I think we were informative as always, and it was always a good discussion. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody who was here in the chat, and I'm going to bolt, so I'll see you all next week. Do your homework.
All right, DS, we appreciate you, and thank you so much for being here as always. So you're awesome. Of course, he's gone as always. Falls right out.
He did say that. He did say he was going though.
Yeah, I know he's going.
Yeah.
And Pro 186 sounds like he's having some audio problems, but can you hear it? There he is.
I think I'm back.
All right, well, we're saying our goodbyes. I want to thank you again for being on here, and I'm sure we'll get you on again. And thanks for sharing all of that information with us. And if you have any goodbyes you want to say to the chat.
Yeah, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed listening to what everybody had to say and chatting with everyone. I haven't had, I have to read the chat, so I'm definitely gonna read the chat on the rewind. But yeah, this was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being a part of it. And Roger, what have you got to say? I know it's plenty.
Well, I just wanted to thank Daniel again. It's a thrill to be on here with him. There's a lot of echo, but I'm sorry about that. I'm obviously a big fan of his channel and have been since the very beginning. So I'm glad that he's on here, that people are listening to him, how prepared he is, how knowledgeable he is. And again, he and Mr. Miracle are 2 channels that if they say buy this, I buy. I keep it on my list at least. So thank you for joining us. It really has been an honor. Hope you're on here again. And I will see you in your channel and you'll see me in mine. And everybody in the chat, awesome as always. Great supporters in this chat. Couldn't be more honored to be part of this great community. Thank you, Bub, as always, for putting up with me for this past year.
Oh, quit it. I love it. I'm having trouble with Daniel's mic. It's like coming in and out. I tried to fix it, but I think I might have broke it worse. So
we're in the death throes, so it's okay.
I know, it's okay. All right, guys, as we rattle on to our sweet good night, thank you all for being a part of this. And of course, Roger, thank you as always. It's not putting up with you. I get to enjoy you. And you are one of the top 2 people I wanted for this chat when I first started. And I got both of them. So it worked out really good. So thank you so much. And Daniel, thanks for being here. And the rest of the chat, thanks for joining us. And we'll catch you next week on the No Faces Comic Chat. Read a comic. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.